about these good decisions that you're making, and think about what happens if I make 10,000 of these really good decisions. What's my company going to look like? And that I think is super, super critical. There aren't a lot of really bad decisions. It's a lot of really good ones where no one thought about the unintended consequences of it.
You want to answer?
If you want to, yeah.
I'm going.
19. Oh, wow.
The only one thing I would say is I think nobody intends for it to happen. I think it just happens. I think to your point, I think, when you're acquired, growth spurt, right? I think time, bandwidth, things are all challenges, especially when it's like revenue, we need to hit so much profit. It's about X, Y, and Z. It's all about numbers. It's all about spreadsheets. We do lose sight. And I think a lot of times, especially leadership and CEOs and C-suite, they just don't have the time, not that that should be an excuse, but they have so much priorities and there's only so many hours in the day that they don't have the time to breathe. And they rely on their sub-leadership team or their leadership team below them to be able to carve out that time. But I think time is really a detriment to the workplace, because I'm sure that there's nobody here that would say that they go through a single day and they had tons of time to do everything they wanted to, plan everything they wanted to do that day. It just happens. Like, things happen, it gets away from you, and sometimes we just need to take a pause and just like take a breath. And I think too often we don't do that. And I think that can just start to spiral, and then before we know it, we're kind of in this situation where we didn't plan it, it's not what we wanted, but it's happened. Now, what do? Or you take a conscious effort as you grow and you scale, and you really have to work even harder to make sure that you can keep that humanity, and you can make sure you can kind of keep that in place. But again, I think, to your point, I agree with you. Like, I don't know if it is actually possible, to create that uniqueness and keep that 400 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, so on and so forth. There are going to be barriers and things that are always going to impact that.
So right before, we're about to give it to you, but just to try and package this up neatly, essentially what we're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that this optimization mentality, when you're dealing with human beings who are far from optimal, which is everybody, except for me. When you're dealing with optimal, yeah, I saw your reaction to that. But yeah, when you're dealing with an optimization mentality to organizations full of people with their quirks, you'll optimize the humanity out of the workplace. And so you need to have a different kind of mentality where you accept that there's going to be inefficiencies, people are going to do the wrong thing, and that's fine. All right? Does that sound about right? Awesome. On to your question.
So we've talked a little bit about communication, different types of communication, the complexity of communication. We've talked a little bit about inspirational leadership. We've talked about the necessity of respect in underlying communication. So I'm going to ask a bit of a devil's advocate question, and this is not what I expected to ask before I came here tonight. But in France, just by way of an example, there was Nicolas Sarkozy, who was a bit of a brash leader. He was followed by François Hollande, who was called the normal president. And under the normal, I know, yes, but under the normal president, he's a nice guy, he seems laid back, etc. He let a documentary be done about his life, and documentarians followed him around, made him very human. There are pros about that, but then there's been a resulting discussion on we need to be careful what we wish for, because now maybe we've lost respect for the role of le président. So with that as an example, how do we talk? We're preaching to the choir. We all believe that a workplace has to allow for the imperfections of humanity. How do we find that line of appropriateness and humanity? I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that.
It's a great question.
Great question. Completely agree that how do you balance being a respectable, tough leader who has a handle on numbers, processes, scalability, at the same time can show emotion? Not an easy answer. I can tell you that. I can narrate a personal experience with there was one previous company wasn't doing well, financially struggling, low motivation, and we were trying to sell the future vision through showing a 1-year growth path, through showing revenue numbers, whereas a recent survey told us it's the emotional connectedness that employees are missing. Made a simple tweak to the next town hall where one of our recommendations to the speakers was share your personal story of the last time you were in a massive mess, where you were at a low point of your life. Precede the numbers, precede the future that you're selling with how you overcame that. Make it personal. It was an audience of 500 plus. We did that over 2 town halls. The survey results differed, but your point is absolutely valid. And going back to the previous question also about scaling and optimization of human behavior, you will have to balance it out. If you are a 60,000 employee company and you want a 20 days PTO policy, because guess what, you're accountable to your stakeholders of the number of days employees take off because it impacts your P&L, you will balance it out by, let's say, introducing a return to work program for recent moms. So you will need to balance out the equation. That's
Yeah.
I may be out of left field here, but I don't really want to be respected as a leader because of my title or how buttoned up I am, and I would never respect anyone for that. This guy I told you about at the town hall cried about having put down his dogs. You know what? I didn't respect him any less, and I respected him more, but the reason I didn't interpret this as like, well, this is just some weirdo who can't like keep boundaries between his personal life and his professional life, is because the guy was fucking brilliant and good at his job. So I didn't have less respect for him because he was amazing, and I totally looked up to this guy. I don't know anything about France and don't want to comment about French politics, but I can tell you I would rather all of our leaders be more approachable and be awesome at their jobs. Like, how incredible would that be if all of our political leaders were awesome at their jobs and were also really good, approachable, authentic, warm human beings? Now, having said that, like, I talk a lot about authenticity in my work, and I think it's okay to draw some lines, because in the real world of our humanity, we also draw lines. Like, you know, I say, look, being authentic doesn't require that you like fart in front of everybody at work just because you have to. Like, that's a line that maybe we all want to say, like, it's okay to like go do that somewhere else. And, you know, maybe like we don't need to like see everyone's full humanity at work. But I think there's a line between like, when I'm talking with you or having some kind of interaction with you, are you getting the real me and the real thing I'm trying to bring to this moment? Or are you getting a facade that I've constructed because I'm worried that if I don't construct this facade, you're gonna think less of me and you won't accept me? And if we're doing that, that to me is not psychologically safe. We're blocking the expression of that amazing, unique, wonderful thing that makes you that the world deserves to have out there. Unlike, I don't think, you know, if you hold your farts in, I think we're all gonna be okay. And so that to me is like just a clear distinction between things that you ought to express because they're core to your humanity and the people around you will benefit from that if you find the right way to express it, and context does matter, versus things that really nobody really needs to have access to, and you're probably better off just. So I don't know what was, I'm now curious to see the documentary, but there probably are some lines.
I invite you to one event, you start talking about farts. So these questions have been really great. Does anyone else have, unless you want to add something real quick, who else?
Questions.
Well,
Sarah.
yeah, so I probably don't need this, but okay, I'll take it. I have observed something, so having just come from a really big company now, a fairly small one that just got acquired by another company, that in this zeal to attract a certain type of worker, even some of the most, well, let's just say cheap big companies are trying to put in these superficial perks like food, like, you know, beanbag chairs or whatever they think.
Or like office dogs. for
Yeah,
example.
right, whatever they think a certain persona of worker that they're trying to attract is gonna find competitive, I guess. But, you know, if you've started your career at a time when companies just didn't do that, or that's not what motivates you. I just find that these are empty gestures, and in the end, whether you're 25 years old or 55 years old, you want your work to be valued, you want a manager who doesn't suck, and you want to work with nice people who aren't assholes. It's really simple. I think we all want some of the same things, and like you said, maybe we're just overcomplicating this. You go to the Google Mountain View campus, which I've had the privilege of visiting through an employee there, and when I just saw the free food stations every what looked like 10 feet, and I thought, first of all, I'd weigh like as big as a house if I worked here, and second, it's a way to keep people in the certain confines without having a need outside, so you're just really squeezing more out of the worker. So I'm a little cynical about that, but anyway, I'm just bringing this up because I just feel like on the other hand, these more traditional companies are trying to lurch over there, and it's just not authentic. It rings hollow. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I think it's like when you see someone with a monster truck and you're like, clearly they're compensating for something.
Yeah, and I think that is the norm for a lot of like startups,
Sure.
smaller companies. It's like, I'm gonna have a foosball table, I'm gonna have the cold brew on tap, I'm gonna have this, like those perks.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I do like my cold brew in the morning, but that is not why I come to work. I come to work because I want to work for a place that wants to invest in me, and I think there's a big distinction of the perks versus, honestly, and talking to a lot of cancer on a regular basis, that's not what they're looking for. I think companies are still selling that as like, I'm gonna pay for your dry cleaning, which I think Google does, and I'm gonna pay for this, I'm gonna do this, but that's not really what is going to drive people to work for your company. It's like, are they going to invest in me? Are they really invested in my career? And I think that's also where purpose kind of comes in. How do I fit into the purpose of organization? But I think, being authentic in that case and not just sugarcoating it to your point about, an organization that's been on the, best places to work and it's really not a best place to work. I mean, why do companies do that? They go on those lists so that they can say, hey, guess what? We're the best place to work. We're not really, but we're saying that, and we're getting you in the door for that. I think it's the same thing for the perks as well, which to me are very different than true benefits to an employee.
I think one interesting thing to do, as you're starting your company, I'm going to propose you try this, is like, imagine you're talking about your company, but imagine what you're saying about it is like in the form of a dating profile. And I've actually done this in workshops with clients. Write the dating profile for your company as if you were putting yourself on the market. Can you imagine the dating profile that's like, I've got a beanbag chair, and I've got nitro cold brew on tap. Do you want to date me? Like who's now? There's probably a small percentage of people who are superficial enough to be like, yeah, that person's got a lot of money and a nice car or whatever. Like that's the equivalent of it. When the thing that's actually going to make your relationship last for the long term and is going to be satisfying to you is if it's a person who's a good person, cares about you, you've got some kind of simpatico chemistry thing, you're going to love and respect each other, you're going to be honest with each other, like all the things that we all fucking know is like humanity 101. It's like that's actually what people want at work too. So practice saying the thing about your company in the form of a dating profile and ask yourself, like, would you date that company? And if the answer is no, don't fucking do it.
So, yes. So, Christine, how are we doing on time? Is Christine present?
She's over here.
Christine! How are we doing on time?
You've got like 3 minutes.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Very specific.
So, does anyone have a question or an issue that they came here to learn more about that we didn't talk about? If so, raise your hand. Yes.
Sorry, and I came a little late, so I apologize if I missed it. But I wanted to hear how people navigated identity politics. And then you talk a lot about like being more human in the interactions, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't really hear much about like how do you people have trouble with the willingness to understand things that they don't understand, and so it's more than just being more understanding and being more open and being more human. Like how do you help your employees with their willingness to be more understanding of things that they're not familiar with, they're not comfortable with?
So I think Priyanka earlier was talking about how you really need to build an atmosphere of trust and safety so people feel comfortable doing that. And you were saying that's basically up to people managers and influencers in the organization. Do you want to restate that? I don't know why I'm paraphrasing you.
Can I just say, dude, with 3 minutes left, you're asking how to navigate identity politics. That's awesome. Good for you. You've got 72 seconds. Go.
You must be a Bernie supporter.
I'll rephrase what Anna said, but it starts with what messages are you sending through simple platforms. Make a list of all the communication platforms in your company, one-on-ones, town hall, all-hands meetings, team meetings. Have you set a tone that, hey, in these meetings we will talk about feelings on the agenda. So I find this very funny. In one of the meetings I attended, one agenda item was feelings, how we were feeling. Try that next time. Let's see what happens. Don't expect the only caveat I put out when I say all these solutions about influencer program and people manager forum, it takes a lot of hit and trial to get them right. Don't expect a miracle in the first go that you will have a conversation in town hall that we all want a trustworthy workplace and boom, next day you will have everyone else trusting each other. It takes personal sharing, but it takes a catalyst in the workplace. Find an executive sponsor who's passionate about creating that human workplace. Out of 9 folks in the executive team, maybe you'll find one person, but use them to amplify your voice. Because I say, don't try to do it alone, no matter what function you are in. Create a support group, create that influencer group to make it scalable. The challenge is it a priority? So the business case discussion that we had, that if I have 100 deliverables and I'm a financially driven company, of course, because I need to make money, how do you prioritize this aspect in culture? And that's where I strongly believe that having a strong people function, having a strong advocate or support group will help you, but you have to make it bubble up to the priority list.
So there are, before I want to have all of each of our three panelists give like a call to action to help inspire you to bring more humanity to your workplace. Before that though, I want to just super briefly, because we have not enough time for this, but we didn't talk about recruitment, and I feel as though recruitment, when the first ways that we're communicating with the people who work in our organizations, it seems super broken to me. Job descriptions seem like they're not very human. The way recruiters often communicate with their candidates isn't very human. The way recruiters often ghost their candidates isn't very human. So how can we do that differently? Because if the first tone that we're setting with the people we will eventually be working with is like, this isn't that human of a place and your role isn't that human, that is setting a tone. And when they come to the workplace, they're going to be expecting that, they're going to be furthering that dynamic. So how can we do that a little bit differently? Maybe how can we just write more human job descriptions? I think that's something, I hate almost every job description I see. So how can we write better job descriptions? I think that's cool.
So do we have like 3 hours? Yeah, right. I mean, I think for me, yes, I think there's a lot of things that are broken in recruitment, but I think the biggest thing is like just being honest and giving feedback. And I think candidates, I'm always try to be as honest as possible. I think a lot of times I'll have a conversation, I'll actually be on the phone and I'll be honest that maybe they're not a right fit. Not everyone's a right fit for every opportunity. And I think I come across a lot of really amazing junior talent, and I want to help them in some way. And I think, companies are very scared to say, oh, okay, it wasn't right, and I'll send them this like canned response of like, thank you, but no thank you. Like, I think that's a really interesting opportunity to bring humanity more into those conversations. I think it's the interactions that you have. I think it's those responses. I think it's, again, the time, being in a timely manner. I think you should treat people like people. And I think a lot of times we forget that. And I think a lot of times, it can be a challenge when you have a lot of roles to fill, you have a lot of people you're talking to, but I do think that there's a way that you can do it, that you can humanize it, where you can actually help people. Because right at the end of the day, I would love to hire everyone, but I can't. But if I can give a tidbit to someone of, maybe something they can improve in the interview, or something that they can restructure their portfolio, or whatever the case may be, I feel like I've given them something that they can maybe action on, that maybe will help them get the next job. And I think, again, that sense of, is it a canned response because we feel like that's all we can give because we don't want to give feedback? Not everyone likes feedback. Whole nother topic, but people don't like giving and getting feedback, and I think it can be perceived in different ways, but I think if you can humanize that process through the interactions and the conversations or just the communication, I think that gets us many steps forward.
That's also one of those legal team problems as well. All right, so then I guess let's do the call to action because Christina has told us we are out of time. So if you tell the audience something that you think they should do to infuse their workplace with more humanity.
So I'm going to go with the technology route. So I would love to challenge everyone in this room within the next week.